So, wouldn't it be cool if Kingdom Hearts had a fighting game?
I've had a few ideas for something like this for a while. I've seen other people's take on it, and so I'm deciding to do my own pitch, because why not? This is gonna be mostly unscripted. Never done a video like this, but it's also been a while since I just sat down and edited a video with me just spewing my thoughts out. So let's see what happens.
Kingdom Hearts is a series that I think would transition very well to a fighting game, considering its roots as an action game. The characters already have very unique and standout abilities that would make for great movesets. You'd be able to team up a bunch of characters who would not normally fight together. You would be able to recreate iconic fights or make dream fights if you wanted. I know that's a big appeal to Smash Bros. And finally, and probably the biggest reason, I just think fighting games are cool. whenever I want a fighting game of something, that's usually because it's one of my favorite things. Which is why I was so happy when Kirby Fighters 2 was announced. In terms of actual mechanics, I think it being a team game would make a lot of sense. There's a lot of iconic fights that are 1v1s, sure, but there's a lot of iconic fights that are also 2v1s, like Final Xemnas, or 3v1s, like a lot of the organization fights. One of my personal favorites is a 3v3, so I think something like Skullgirl's team size select would make a lot of sense, considering that. I think another thing that would make sense is having assists be similar to KH shortcut spells, where you hold one button and then press another one of the face buttons to actually use the special attack. And since these are your assists, that would, if it is a 4-button game, that would mean every character has 4 assists at all times. Because why not one-up BB Tag? And if you wanted, you could also probably rework this into a modern/classic control style, similar to what was in Street Fighter 6, except easy specials would be the classic mode, because that's how it worked in main series Kingdom Hearts, and the motion inputs mode would need to be called something else. I don't know what, maybe classic and complex? I'm not the names guy, that's not for me to figure out. I think MP and Drive Gauge being in the game would also make sense, but MP would be similar to the assist gauge from BB Tag and Drive Gauge from Street Fighter 6, so your assist calls are tied to that, your defense is tied to that, stuff like that. Meanwhile, the Drive Gauge from Kingdom Hearts, not from Street Fighter, would be your super meter. Your level 1 and 2 supers would be called limits, and your level 3s would be cinematic desperation moves. I'm not sure if they're ever officially named, but that's what everyone calls them. Of course, this is a Kingdom Hearts fighting game, and there's probably going to be a lot of long combos, but there's just going to need to be something to end those combos, and Kingdom Hearts has a mechanic for this, the revenge value, and it already works like Skullgirl's Undizzy in main series, which I guess is also MVC2 Undizzy, which came before. Did that come before Cage 2? I don't know, I need to look that up. But having that as your infinite prevention system would make a lot of sense. I realize I'm taking a lot of things from Skullgirls, but that's a good game. Skullgirls is so good. I should play it more. When I told some of my friends about this idea, I said that in theory, different characters could have different revenge values, because you have the average being 12.5 in Cage 2, and then you have Terra with his 25, but then you would have to learn different combos for every revenge value amount, and character-specific combos are one thing, but you usually don't have to learn them. Needing to learn character-specific combos or revenge value-specific combos would get pretty annoying pretty fast in terms of the learning curve. Of course, if you want crazy offense, which I don't see why this game wouldn't have, there's be crazy defense too. So stuff like your push blocks, your just defense, your guard cancels. The main series already has good source material with this, with its various barrier blocks and reprisals. So I think in terms of mechanics, we're pretty much set to go. In terms of actual modes, this is probably the most important part. We've seen with Street Fighter 6 that game modes sell games, so of course you'd have all of the freebies, arcade, survival, online training, all those bare minimums that would normally come with a fighting game. A story mode would probably be included. I think having a side story focusing on the side characters who haven't gotten much action lately would be nice. If there are collectibles from that, then a gallery mode is a given. And if Disney were to veto their characters from the main roster, which I'm going to assume they did, like Nomura also assumed, there should be another mode to represent them. They could do that in story mode. Or maybe there could be some sort of mini-game with the Disney characters, I don't know. I also think community combo trials would be super cool. I like them in Guilty Gear Strive, and I think more games should have them. Before we talk about the actual characters in the game, let's talk about the roster.
Hi, me from post-production. Wow, that's a dumb sentence. Stuff like that is why I don't normally do unscripted videos, but might as well try it out, right?
Like I said earlier, I'm going to assume that there's not going to be any Disney characters in the main roster because Nomura says that Disney said that they don't want to fight each other. But if this was an actual game to exist, there would probably be at least a few Disney characters because they're so important to the series. In terms of actual roster size, there hasn't really been a large budget team game releasing in a while outside of KOF 15, and SNK obviously does way larger base rosters than anyone else, so it's hard to say how big a roster of a game like this would be, especially one that has like all new characters, all new mechanics, you know, not being a sequel, so there's not stuff to pull from. I think 20 characters might feel a little generous for a new game, but team game rosters are generally bigger than solo game rosters. Street Fighter 6 released with 18 characters in a story mode. If this game releases with 20 characters in a story mode, that would probably make sense. It's worth noting that I know nothing about the mobile games, that will come up later, and for the characters I chose, I tried to prioritize characters who will be important in upcoming games, to the best of my knowledge, for the most part. There are some important characters from past games who are here to complete certain trios, but we'll get to them when we get to them. So, obviously, the first three characters are going to be Sora, Riku, Kairi. They're the main characters since the series started. It'd be weird if they weren't in. Sora would probably be I want to say Sora would be a well-rounded character, but I feel like he seems like the type of guy to have a few dirtier tricks up his sleeve, similar to a character like Naru coming from Persona or Jin from BlazBlue. Being able to use moves like Strike Raid for zoning and Sonic Blade for movement would be fun, and Ars Arcanum would probably be pretty cool level 3. In terms of costumes, he has a bunch of stuff to base costumes off of, with his appearances in every game and his pirate or Halloween costumes. For Riku, the Ken to Sora's Riku might not be the best comparison, but in KH1 that's kind of what he was. He was able to activate this dark hand charge thing and then get his access to his own Strike Raid and Sonic Blade. So maybe we can do something like that. You can use one special or use one move to charge up your specials and then be able to use those Strike Raid and Sonic Blades, which are better than Sora's versions but harder to access, similar to a certain character from Street Fighter 6. And like with Sora, you can pull from his costumes in every game he's in. In terms of Kairi, she's probably the hardest of this trio to make something with, because she just never gets to do anything. Like, Xemnas grabs her wrist once and then she's out of the Cage 3 story. Like, come on, man. I get the feeling from her fight with Goatnort in Cage 3 Remind that she would at least have pretty good movement. Stuff like her strike rate teleports or her 7 wishes for movement, but like Sonic Blade strike rate, I don't know, it's the same thing as Sword and Riku, but I'm sure there's something that can like make it work. I imagine her being more movement based than Sora and Riku at least, so that's something. But Nomura, give me more stuff to work with. Come on, help me help you. Another 3 freebies has to be Roxas, Axel, and Xion. They're the second trio we're introduced to, and they're some of the most popular characters in the series. I don't see why they wouldn't be in. Speaking of popular characters, Roxas. Roxas is going to have a lot of players because he's popular and he's cool, so he should be cool in game. You're going to be seeing him a lot. It would kind of suck if he was boring. A way to make him cool would be working in his light and dark and double form that Oathkeeper and Oblivion have in Cage 3. Depending on how you fight or what moves you use, you could charge up either a light or dark mode and then have some sort of install that activates when you charge up a certain amount. As for costumes, for Roxas, I think this is a given, but this applies for the other organization members as well. I don't think the basic organization hoodie should be the default for Roxas or anyone from the organization. It would make a lot of the characters look the same, and I don't think anyone wants to play a game where most of the characters' only different feature is their weapon and what's on top of their heads. Anyway, Axel is another popular character. He's the first character I'm talking about who has never been playable. Characters like him are going to be super important because Cage fans want to be able to mess around with abilities that were used against them. Case in point, being able to set the floor on fire and deal damage over time to anyone on the ground would be super interesting. Let's say you want to either optimize the chip damage you get from that, so you can run a bunch of lockdown assists to keep your opponent on the ground as much as possible. Or maybe you anticipate that they're going to jump out, so you run some sort of anti-air assist to cover the ground and the air at the same time during the pressure. It would open up team building a lot, and I feel like it would be very creative. His default costume would probably be his Cage 3 flannel with the organization hoodie as an alternate, and maybe something based off of his young clothing from Birth by Sleep. Apparently Axel is also based off of Reno from Final Fantasy VII, so a Turk's fit for him would be cool. I also just like suits. Finally, for Xion, and this is gonna be kind of crazy, but I'm tired of the idea that grapplers have to be like these big burly men, like Zangief or Waldstein, or someone from KOF. I don't know much about that game. I like it when grapplers are, you know, all sorts of sizes, like, I think Wrestler Kirby, or Lily and Manon from Street Fighter 6, or Chun-Li from Street Fighter 2. I think Xion being a grappler would be super interesting, and I think it would also be cool if instead of focusing on raw damage, like someone like Terra or Xemnas' grabs would, focusing on opportunity, like stealing meter or getting positioning, would be very cool. Stealing meter especially would make sense considering the plot of 358 over 2 days. Her default costume will probably be her casual clothes from Kingdom Hearts 3, or the ending of it at least, with the hoodie and Keyblade armor as alternates. Alright, next trio, and you're gonna have to forgive me because out of the big 5, BBS is the game I know the least about, but Terra, Ventus, and Aqua would absolutely be locks for a Kingdom Hearts fighting game. On the topic of Terra, I don't think Terra Nort justifies his own slot, considering that most Terra Nort fights are just basically look at what Terra did and now it's being used against you, but Terra being in the game is a given. Command grabs based off either his whip transformation from Cage 2 or his Dark Impulse style from BBS would make sense, and Terra's speed make him a great fit for a more traditional grappler. And aside from that, this would just be a fun character to mess around with the limits and DMs of. Being able to use the drive-by or Ultima Cannon from Cage 2, or having his massive DM as this Deadly Rave type super would be awesome. No, this is just wish fulfillment at this point. His normal clothes would be his default, with his Keyblade armor and Terra Nort being alternate costumes. It also makes sense if Terra Nort had his own voice clips. For Ventus, I know that his whole thing is speed, so it would make too much sense to give him a bunch of wind-based movement specials. Something interesting that you can also do with wind is use it to hinder the opponent's movement, something similar to Cage 3 Arrow or Blaze Blue's new 13 would be cool, especially when combining it with other characters, someone who would maybe want to keep an opponent at full screen, or wants to lock them down to set up shop for something. Ventus only really has his default fit and Keyblade armor to go off of. Maybe you could pull the armored Ventus Nightmare as an alternate color for the Keyblade armor, but I don't think it's enough for a costume. This is a good time to mention that the game would probably get more creative with its alts than I have. The Turks crossovers are a good start, but I'm sure there would be more in store. Finally, for Aqua, supposedly she's the most experienced out of the BBS trio, and I think a good way to represent that would be giving her a wide variety of tools. That being said, to me at least, Aqua has focus on zoning vibes, while Ventus would have the more aggressive BBS spells such as the Surges. Aqua would have the more defensive ones. If you want to have light set play, some mines wouldn't be a bad idea. For example, her main BBS costume would be her default, with her anti-Aqua and Keyblade armor fits being alts. But I mean, come on, that's enough costumes. Let's get some real villains in here, right? I think the best place to start for that would be Ansem. He would be the puppet character of the game, because that's how he fought in Cage 1. It makes a lot of sense to have him fight like that in this game too. Especially because puppet character is an archetype where you can do so much with how they work, both control-wise and mechanically, and I'd be really interested in seeing something like that. Ansem doesn't really have much in terms of costumes, but I would personally really like a Billy Zane voice pack. I wonder what he's up to nowadays. Moving on from that, we have Xemnas. I've talked about him a little bit before. He does a lot in every game he's in, but I think zoning in on him being a grappler would make sense with stuff like his We Shall Go Together and his Cage 3 Sorns being prime examples of grabs he has. Another thing that you could mess around with him is giving him strings similar to Extra Ramethal and to give him access to his various kick and blade attacks from the main series.
Another thing I think would be cool would be if Snapback were to be in this game, having Xemnas' Snapback be based off of the move where he traps Sora and you're forced to play as Riku. This would stop the character who was snapped from covering health as well. Maybe the way to beat it would be just hitting Xemnas like in Cage 2. I think it'd be pretty cool.
His default costume would be the Cage 2 final form with the organization hoodie as an alternate. I think it would make sense if Xemnas was the only character to have the hood up like he had in Cage 1. Finally, you have the big bad of however many years the series was going until Cage 3, Xehanort. And I think something cool that you could do with him is allowing him to Nort his opponents to either buff himself, or he can use the Norting as something like a sticky bomb and detonate it to get extra combos. Doing this would get rid of the buff though, so you would have to have that balancing act.
Something that would make this really interesting, though, is being able to friendly fire on your teammates. As sure, Xehanort has tried norting his enemies like twice, but
Normally, people are being norted willingly, so being able to have teammates who you can nort would make a lot of sense. These would give bigger buffs, but at the same time, I think it would make sense if it would prevent your teammates from healing in the back. If you could set off your assist like a sticky bomb as well, like you can do with your opponents, I think that'd be really cool. We're 12 characters down, done with all of the main trios now, so let's get into the other characters who I think would be likely, starting with Marluxia. Strelitzia looks like she's going to have a big role in Cage 4, so if this was focusing on characters who are going to be important going forward, Marluxia is one of the best places to start. As for moveset, I can't be the only one who saw the Plus R Testament similarities the first time I fought Marluxia in Cage 2, right? They're both Reapers, they both have a bunch of set play stuff, it's crazy. I think starting with a set play basis would make sense, with stuff like his rose pools, his rose cages, and stuff like that, but where it would get really interesting is if you gave him Rachel Wind. Rachel from BlazBlue, I mean. The wind, with the wind working like how it does in his fights in Cage 2 and 3. Not only that, but it would be really interesting to combine the wind with your assists, so I think this character would be really interesting for team building if he were to be added. Of course, if you're going to have Marluxia, you kind of have to have Larxene. They're like a 2-for-1 deal. You can't separate them for some reason. And Larxene would probably have to have her clones, considering how unique they make her Cage 2 battle. There's many ways to do that. What I would do is make specials that can be used during other actions, which makes the special come out as an assist call, if that makes sense. That being said, the clone of the original could be Happy Birthday, and hits on both would not deal extra RV. You'd still get full combo for your Happy Birthday. Beyond that, movement like command dashes or stuff like Pikachu's quick attack would make sense. For both Marluxia and Larxene, having their default costumes be their mobile game outfits would be cool. There's no good official art of them. In fact, there's no good 3D models of them either. But there's a good place to have them, right? Next up, we have everyone's favorite Uber driver, Luxord. I think having his cards as a unique resource would make sense. Maybe you could get buffs depending on the hand of cards you had. Asuka already did the cards equal special thing, so I kind of want to distance Luxord from that. It's not to say he won't have card-based specials. Like in main series, being able to set up and then teleport the cards would make sense. Maybe you could set up a card like an Aegis Reflector type barrier, that would also be cool. And as for Luxord, I have no idea what his costumes would be. Like, for other characters, I can see them having some costumes. No clue what his costumes would be, but I do think it'd be cool if his intro animation was him pulling up in the car from the Cage 3 ending. Xigbar is also another lock if we're talking about characters who are going to be important going forward. On the surface, I think he'd be a pretty basic ammo character, mainly a zoner in theory, but it'd be cool if he had some gravity-based attacks, and it'd be really cool if he had Izanami's air stand from BlazBlue Central Fiction. What if he could also flip upside down to go even further on that idea? He does that in main series, so I don't see why he wouldn't do it in a fighting game. Imagine jump canceling a normal only to go into an upside down jab. I think it'd be really cool. Xigbar, another character I have no idea what the costumes would be because we've never seen Xigbar or Luxu outside of the organization hoodie. Maybe the Radiant Garden costume would be a good alt, but I have no idea what his main costume would be. Yozora is another super cool character who is probably going to be very important. In Cage 3, his whole gimmick is stealing from you. He'll steal your Keyblade, he'll steal your health, he'll steal your items, your Kupo coin. But I don't quite know how to represent that in a fighting game outside of Meter, especially because Shion is already stealing Meter. However, if you lose to Yozora, one of the in-game hints says to watch out for his varied gadgets. Maybe a set-play character would make sense, setting up delayed lasers, his teleporting sword, or pyramid traps throughout the screen would be cool. Finally, and we have 3 character slots left. These 3 character slots will probably be mobile game characters I don't know about. I know that the foretellers are important, but I didn't watch back cover yet, so instead I'm just gonna put a few characters who I think would be cool here. Thanks. So firstly, Vanitas. Normally I'm not a Vanitas fan, but when I was doing this Cage 3 data battle, I noticed him teleporting and shooting a bunch of Dark Firagas, but one of the things he does is teleport and shoot a slow Dark Firaga pretty close to you, and then teleport again and shoot another one right next to you, and like, that's a super turbo fireball trap. Why is he trying to do that in Kingdom Hearts? In a fighting game though, I think that'd be super cool, and I think playing up the ST references would be a ton of fun. Like, imagine having forward charge moves to reference charge storage, or other silly things. Don't make it too broken though. This is a game in the modern day, and ST has some criminal stuff in it. Another cool character would be Zexion. He has a ton of potential for really cool moves with his book formations and illusions. A big draw of him would be the ability to call fake assists, I think. Obviously he'd need to have good assists to justify being afraid of a fake one, but I think it'd be super cool. And it's not really been done before in any other fighting game. And what if you could set up fake Zexions around the screen and either attack from them or switch positions with them? To be honest, a lot of these are ideas I had for a Quentin Beck in a hypothetical Marvel vs. Capcom 4, but I don't think that's happening. Or, well, that might happen. Evo soon, I'll wait and see. Next character, young Xehanort, another character I feel like there's a lot to pull from. His moveset is like basically already done. I mean, look at what Axel Lowe does, right? Jokes aside, I think zoning in on the time stop aspects as well would be pretty cool. And another cool thing I think would do is be able to record and replay actions and then use them again later in a round. Finally, Saix. If I was putting in characters who are just the series All-Stars, Saix would be one of my first picks, but that's not the criteria I went for, so I guess I didn't. In terms of moveset, something similar to ABBA would make sense, being able to go into some super form, but making sure you have a way to enter and exit it safely. Having Berserk mode activate when its gauge is full would make sense, and having activation cancel whatever action you're in, other than hit stun, would make for cool conversions. Imagine filling Berserk mode mid-combo and then being able to change your route because you got a Berserk cancel. So that's pretty much it. I'm really bad at ending videos, but I do want to leave you all with the closing note that a cage fighting game would be so cool. I know I'm not the first person to say this, but I just want to throw my hat into the ring, you know, get my ideas out there. If Square Enix sees this and I want to steal it, I don't care. I think my ideas are great, that's why I'm sharing them. Bye.
All of the organization member names are anagrams, so I'll give you some time to figure out what Zen this is an anagram of. So this fight for now, this fight is 2 separate fights, both done in one go. The first is a fairly simple fight, the skyscraper, while the second is the 2v1 versus 3-2. Oh no, with skyscraper Zen is simple enough, but pretty
I just
quickly.
realized.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I just put together the name anagram. God damn it.